What's going on, everybody? Welcome to XP Earned. I am your host, as usual, Shane Craig, and joining me is the lovely Jessi Craig.
Hello.
We got a good show for you ahead here. This week, only two topics. We're not gonna go into our usual third because the two topics that we have are potentially kind of longer ones. We're gonna hit you with some new information on the Nintendo Switch. Some new leaked information that kind of reveals that the initial information that we got may have been a little optimistic. I'll explain what that means here just shortly. And then after that, we're going to get into Star Wars, or I should say Rogue One, a Star Wars story. What we're going to do with that is the first few minutes of that discussion, we're going to not spoil anything. We're just going to give a very broad general feelings, and then we'll let you know, okay, now we're going to start spoiling some things. So if you haven't seen the movie, we'll give you a chance to back on out of the video so we don't spoil anything for you. Because if you know anything about us, you know that we're sticklers for spoilers. I hate a spoiler. So they drive me crazy. So with all that said, let's jump into the Nintendo Switch. This I feel like this shirt may have shrunk. Because the back side, I feel like I could Incredible Hulk my way through the back of the shirt now. I haven't worn it in a while. Either the shirt has shrunk or I have grown, which seems weird because I'm like 27 now, so I really feel like I'm a grown boy.
It's probably just used to me.
Here we are.
It, so.
Okay, so it just feels a little awkward. Sorry. So if you see me doing this a lot, you know why. So what I want to do real quick is I want to jump us over to an article on Eurogamer. I love Eurogamer. I love Digital Foundry. I love the work that these guys do. They're nerdy as shit at Digital Foundry, and I fucking love it. It's the best. I love what they get into. So if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we did a video that a few tens of thousands of you may have watched about some leaked information on the Nintendo Switch. I postulated through this information that the Switch looks like it could be fairly powerful. We talked about how it was based on the NVIDIA X1, or at this point we were theorizing maybe even X2, the new version. You know, NVIDIA made this quote saying that it was going to be based on the world's top performing GeForce gaming graphics card. So we all kind of assumed it would be Pascal, which is the new version for their chips. So we thought, oh wow, you know, if it's basically what's in the NVIDIA Shield, and it's the new version, and it's Pascal, you know, we figured, wow, if you look at these benchmarks, the Switch could be pretty powerful. So we were all kind of excited about it. I'm still excited about the Switch, but I think we have to dial back, basically, our expectations based on these leaks from Eurogamer. So I'm going to really quickly kind of walk you through them. So first off, it's, with all likelihood, not going to be Pascal. It's going to be Maxwell, which is the old version. That's not that big of a deal because we're looking at basically the last Maxwell version for the X1 before it goes to the new Pascal standard. So it's not going to be like a huge difference. So that's good. You can also assume that there's going to be some Pascal style optimizations brought in from into this one for Nintendo, basically, because it is right on the line. Basically, this seems like it was a timing issue. They wanted to get their system out now. They didn't want to wait for the new chipsets to hit the market. So that's not that big of a concern. What is the concern, though, and I've got it here on the screen right in front of you, is this information here. What we're looking at, while the system is undocked, the available CPU speed is going to be 1,020 megahertz. So you can say effectively 1 gigahertz. In a vacuum, that's meaningless. But we're not in a vacuum now. We know that this is, with all likelihood, just the X1 chipset, the X1, NVIDIA X1. So we know what to compare this to. The NVIDIA Shield runs at 2 gigahertz. So this thing is essentially the NVIDIA Shield with half the CPU rate. That's a pretty substantial drop. Half is a lot. So it's going to run, theoretically, slower than the NVIDIA Shield set-top box. Now, you can obviously factor in all the optimizations that Nintendo is going to do, code specifically for one system, unlike an Android when it's for all Android devices. So it's going to perform better than just if you took the NVIDIA Shield, cut the CPU rate in half, and then tried to run, Dead Trigger or some Android game. It's going to run better than that. because this is going to be optimized by Nintendo for Nintendo. But still, half the CPU. This is where things get really a little iffy for me. The available GPU speeds while undocked are going to be 307 megahertz. So that's not a lot. So basically, while you're undocked, the GPU is going to run at 307. When you're docked, it's going to run at 768. So effectively 40% slower GPU while it's undocked. So you undock it, you immediately lose about half of your GPU capability. Now, again, that's concerning. This should all be concerning for people that were hoping for a beast like I was in our last video on it. Here's the thing, though, to kind of explain why that might not be a big deal. You can assume that when it's undocked, the screen is a little 6.5-inch screen. It's going to be running at 720p. When you dock it, it's going to probably jump up to at least 1080p based on your TV. So you shouldn't expect to see a massive difference in performance. This basically puts them in line with doing what people are having to do for the PS4 and the PS4 Pro, basically making two SKUs, a high-res and a lower-resolution version. So I think that the question here, is for a lot of people is going to be, well, why are they underclocking it? Because this is the same chipset. It could run at 2 gigahertz. It could do this. So why are they underclocking it so much? Well, first off, they could run it at 2 gigahertz with all likelihood while it's docked. But then you would essentially have a system that was wildly more powerful while docked than when undocked. And that's going to make for...
They don't want too much of a difference.
Exactly. You don't want to have to build 2 radically different games. Here we're just talking about resolution. It's not a big deal. So when you look at something like the Xbox One, it draws about 75 watts of power. Okay. When you look at something like the Vita, 3 to 4 watts of power. The iPad, 7, 6, 8 watts of power. Handhelds have to draw radically less power than a full plugged into your wall system has to run. That is why the NVIDIA Shield, I didn't have, we kind of an estimate, it probably draws in the range of 20 from what I can tell. 20 watts on a handheld would mean your battery life would be like 15 minutes. Like it would just go dead immediately. So they can't have that. You can't have it running at 2 gigahertz for that exact reason. It just can't. It would go dead so quickly. So basically, the old video we made with those leaked specs, we knew what the specs could be, and we based our estimates on that. Those could be specs are still theoretically possible. It's just that now we're getting word that Nintendo, for the reasons of battery life, are going to go nowhere near that.
Yeah.
They're going to hang way back at basically half power to preserve battery life.
So I wonder how much of a difference it's going to be. If it's still going to be a fun console / handheld
I
device.
think that game design still is king, and I think that when you factor in the rumors that it's rumored to be able to do GameCube Virtual Console. So that gives us a little bit of context, because if you take, and Digital Foundry did a great job with this already, if you take the NVIDIA Shield and you run the Dolphin emulator on it at full power, it runs 25 to 30 frames a second at 1080p on most games. So if Nintendo is getting this thing at half power to run GameCube games, granted they're going to be able to optimize them much more thoroughly than the Dolphin emulator developers.
Yeah, just using an emulator.
You can assume that it's Nintendo, even though it's running at half power, they're still going to be able to squeeze out some pretty impressive visuals. Breath of the Wild is running, from what we can tell, better on the Switch based on the direct feed video than it was on the Wii U. Granted, those were old builds of the Wii U game. It may be better now. But it can run these games. So basically what all this means is the system going to be on par with the PS4 or Xbox One? No, it's not going to be. It's just not possible.
And it's kind of a little bit disappointing, because it's kind of time for Nintendo to be like up there.
Well, with the GameCube. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Basically just, what they're doing is so, like, it makes sense. Finally, what they're doing finally makes sense. Like, it's a handheld, but it's also a console, and it's little. It's not huge like the other consoles, but it just still kind of seems like they're just a little bit behind.
Technologically, yes, it does seem like about the time, 2005, 2006, they kind of opted out of the arms race, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas, the GameCube, when it came out, was, objectively more powerful than the PlayStation 2. In a lot of ways, it was more powerful. I mean, you look at Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube versus how it ran on the PS2. It ran better and looked better on the GameCube. But then with the Wii and the Wii U, they kind of backed out of this most powerful system arms race, and it seems like they have no interest in going back to it. It seems like they want to continually be the different system, the other option. And it'll be interesting to see exactly what they're able to squeeze out of this system, because you can look at some of the games on Wii U and even on Wii that had no business looking as good as they did. Go back to Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. The game was gorgeous.
That is something too, is like it to me, it's not really going to matter, because this stuff is a little bit, I don't think about these things. That's not how I really tend to think about this. Obviously, it's more your game.
Sure.
But as long as they put out some good games for it,
it'll be just fine. Now, keep in mind that does our hopes for third party support. Are we going to get Grand Theft Auto 5 on the Nintendo Switch? That throws these things into question. I think there's a bird outside that would like to interject. Let's see what they have to say.
Oh, of course.
So I really hope that's being picked up on. Otherwise, I look like a lunatic. So let's move on to Rogue One, a Star Wars story whose name I just said right. What did you think of the, since I spent the last 10 minutes kind of blabbering about specs and numbers that only a few people will care about, what did you think of Rogue One, a Star Wars story?
I thought it was really good. I thought it kind of fit in really well with the original trilogy. Unfortunately, it did make the prequel trilogy look really, really bad and super stiff and just
in fairness,
not good.
In fairness, though, most things do look, those trilogies make them look bad.
Yeah, well, they kind of look bad on their own, but this just, it fit in so well with the last movie and also with the original trilogy. It just had that texture to it, like the practical effects, there was a lot of CG, but like it was done really well.
K2SO was a full CG character that looked great.
Oh, yeah, he was perfect.
Was one of the high points of the movie. I tend to agree. I think it was a really, really strong movie. I don't think it's fair to necessarily compare it to Episode 8, because I think that they're wildly different movies, and I think that's intentional.
But that's not, like, what I'm saying, though, is, like, you can tell that it's from the same universe.
Correct. Sure, absolutely.
It's the tone, the mood, it fits in really well.
But at the same time, it does give you a much more bleak look. Where I think that the older movies even tended to kind of gloss over the desperation that was kind of in the air at this point. How much of a ragtag group this was, and how desperate that they were. And you really, like these scenes here in these smaller cities, you really get a sense of character of this galaxy much more. To me, this movie is character building for an entire galaxy.
Yeah, it's less of a spectacle, and now it's more believable. You're seeing, families, people just doing like normal things, like Galen himself. This wouldn't be a spoiler, but he's like a farmer, right?
He's
like
farming. It's in the trailers. You could see.
Yeah, he was like a farmer, and like that's like cool, Like it's just showing people being people or aliens being aliens. I guess they're people in Star Wars. Yeah. Otherwise, that'd be kind of like not racist, but like
prejudice, speciesist. So. Let's move. Just fair warning, we're going to move into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and back on out. If you've seen the movie, we're going to get into some stuff. So this movie's bleak. It's dark. It's very dark. It to me, it's like it's a war movie, much more so than I think the other ones were. We're going into some sort of other video. I was kind of wondering if it would play the next trailer, but it did not.
Yeah.
So we'll just back on that.
It definitely did have the feel, like, especially there was this planet that they were on, and I know that they said the name, but like I feel like I had a hard time keeping up a little bit. That was like kind of one of the negatives. Is
it
that
moved
I had a hard
around
time.
So quickly.
Yeah. The planet that they were stealing the plans from was kind of like a tropical planet. It was actually really, really pretty, but seeing them have their battle scene on it reminded me a lot of like, the Vietnam and color thing on
Right,
Netflix
sure.
that we had watched, you know.
And they mentioned that they actually were inspired by some of that footage from the Vietnam War, and it definitely has that feeling of desperation of a group. Basically, you know, it's that stereotypical group of a few faceless combatants giving their life for the cause, and that was really different to see in this universe, because as dark as things have gotten in Star Wars, to me this was a peak of desperation and darkness, in the sense that they gave their lives to get these plans back. And I mean, that's how it ends. They all die. I mean,
not like they gave their lives and they made it out and were like injured, or some of them made it out. Like, I kind of wondered if the main two characters were gonna make it out, because they did that thing that's actually super cliche, and I'm kind of sick of seeing it in like TV and movies, where you've got your group of heroes, and you know, each step of the way someone falls behind, someone dies, you know, something like that. But then the main two make it out. I hate that. I think that's like,
it's been done,
super unrealistic. Like, what would be more realistic than that is that they all die in like one explosion. Like, to me, that's more like they're all dying at the same time. That's more realistic.
right?
But I get what they're doing. They're showing each person come to terms with, you know, their own personal things going on. Like, what's his name? Malbus not believing in the Force
until they're at the very end, and then almost,
end.
you know, through the death of the blind samurai guy, something like that. Through his death, sort of carrying on that spirit, you know, with him, and then basically feeling emboldened, I guess, from it. You know, that was a really powerful scene between those two, which I thought had a very interesting
K2SO,
relationship.
you know, in fact, I think like one of the last things that he said was that Jin's behavior is continuously unpredictable, or something like that. Basically, he's a statistics dude, and he keeps, you know, saying, oh, there's a really high probability of her turning her back on you and shooting you or whatever. Well, she gives him a gun, which is something he was wanting the whole time, you know, basically wanting to be trusted, because he's more than just a robot, you know, or droid. He was like, he had personality.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, how this, you know, this really gave us the perspective of how fragmented and fractured the rebels were, and how this event galvanized them, and it gave them a hope. And that kind of, you know, that was really important, and it really showed how bad off they were before this victory, and how much of a sacrifice it took to get it. It sort of parallels with how seemingly unstoppable the Empire looked, you know, with they had a whole planet just to keep the records on, for God's sake. I mean, come on. They had
a shield on the entire planet.
Yeah, I mean, they looked utterly unstoppable. Yeah, I mean, they did a lot right in this movie. There were a few things that I didn't, so there's some editing choices that I thought were a little odd. The close-ups on Tarkin's CG character really kind of underscored the uncanny valley problem, where it was immediately clear this was not a real man. The closer they got, the more I was like, why don't you just back up a little bit? It looks, I mean, it looks good. Don't get me wrong, but like,
but don't like get up on top of it and be like, look.
Showing Leia there at the end was cool, but they didn't.
Unnecessary.
To me, they could have just shown the back of her head. I know there have been people that would have wanted more, but I think that, you know who that is. You don't need to shove it down their throats of like, ooh, and now Leia's here. And I think that if there's one complaint I have, it's that they, you know, they feel the need to at all times. There were a few good callbacks. Leia was pushing it for me. C-3PO and R2 were a little bit superfluous to me, but you know, other than that, the only real other editing problems that I would point to is, to me, the whole conversation between Krennic and Vader to me seemed pointless.
Yeah.
To me, if Vader never said a word, if all you saw him was in that vat, and then at the end of the movie where he's on the ship cutting dudes down, that would have been, to me, much more powerful.
Yeah, we didn't need to see him choke another dude.
He just loves choking people.
Yeah, he seems
he
really
loves choking
into
people.
that. I disagree about C-3PO and R2-D2. I'm not going to get totally into it, but I just really feel like they were an essential part of the whole thing. Though it does make me wonder why they were there and not with... Who were they supposed to be with?
Well, they were there so we could see them. of course.
No, but I mean, like, there literally is like a history timeline for them because they've been all over the place.
Right.
You know, they're so entwined in every single war that's ever happened. But well, you know, the Force goes with them too. Just because you're a droid doesn't mean the Force doesn't love you.
Sure, of course.
That's what I want to see. I want to see a droid that's like a Jedi, and he's like,
wasn't there
the Force be with us.
Who was that guy in the? He had a bunch of lightsabers in the prequel movies.
That was, oh my god, he's my favorite.
General, was he a general?
Yeah, it was General Grievous.
Was he a robot? He was a robot. And he wielded a lightsaber.
He was kind of both. Like, he had a heart and stuff.
Oh, you're right, he did, didn't he?
He is a badass. Actually, he is like one. Cool. He's like my favorite.
He's probably
character.
the one good thing. Him and Maul, maybe the only two good things from those movies.
The bad guys really do tend to be some of my favorites. I like the Jedi, and I feel like I would probably be on their side.
Too stiff.
But they are, it's too stiff. It's too, everything's going to be okay, and I'm just going to let myself die. It's fine. I would not be like that. But anyways, that's a different tangent.
I think that the its greatest accomplishment, this movie's greatest accomplishment, I should say, is that it adds so much context to the older movies, and it really fills in so many gaps in such a good way. There are some plot holes in it, but nothing that wasn't in the old movies too. Nothing. I mean, Galen spending 3 minutes to talk about how much he loves his daughter instead of just telling them what they needed to know. Leia did it too. I mean, to a certain degree. You know, and of course there are excuses that can be made for that. But you know, these are the small suspensions of disbelief that are necessary in any movie of this sort.
Some just, you know, I'm gonna try and be quick about this. I don't want to get too much into it, but some of the negatives that I thought were just that I felt like the plot was too kind of crammed together. They didn't take enough time. We didn't really know what happened to Jen Walsh. Is her name Jen? Am I just saying some random Jen Erso? Okay, Jen Erso. All right, thank you. That's what I thought I was hearing. And
Galen Erso.
Yeah. You know, we don't know much about what her life was like. We just, through one conversation, we find out how she got into being a slave, I guess, or, you know, prisoner or something like that. I thought we were going to see more of that. One thing I really liked about her, though, but I also didn't like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, is that I like that through most of the first half of the movie, she did not say anything. She was really quiet. For a minute, like, I thought she was going to be like a mute character, and I was going to be like, whoa, how is this going to work, you know?
Yeah, she didn't speak for a long time.
Yeah, but then she just kind of, and this goes into the negative, like, just flips like that. And then all of a sudden she gives a shit
She's
about
very
what's
guarded.
happening.
Well, and that interaction with her father is what pulled her back in.
I know why, but it's kind of like they could have given us a hint for a second that it was going to happen.
They had so many characters to try and get involved that they jumped around a lot early, but it was in order to get to the main plot, which was basically the whole movie was the main plot. There wasn't a lot of side stuff, which I think it's fine. The movie would have been 3 hours long otherwise.
Yeah. Another thing too is that I'm guessing that everything that happened in a relatively short amount of time. You know, they had their just little days. They got her, you know, they're like, okay, we want you to go get the plans or whatever, destroyed Death Star.
Talk to Saw Gerrera.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they wanted to draw out her dad or something. I don't know, it was really glossed over. I just kind of felt like it just sped through it. But so I guess immediately after they got the plans and transmit it and everything, they give it to Leia, and then she gives it, I don't know, maybe there's another battle like immediately, and then she gives them to R2-D2, and then we're into the plot of the episode 4.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think in general the movie was really solid. I think it did a lot of good things. It really, I liked the way that it played up this faceless, forgotten to history sacrifice, basically, that they never, you know, these names don't get mentioned in the other movies. Obviously, we know why. It's because this movie wasn't made yet. But it's kind of the way that they took that accidental fiction and play. Well, of course, they didn't mention these people. They're all dead. You know, I mean, they made it work, and they made, you know, why was the Death Star so easy to blow up? Does that seem like a weird plot hole? Well, no, because Galen did this. See, that they filled in all these holes, you know, in a really, really intelligent way, which I think is easier said than done. So,
yeah, to make it as heavy as it was and as believable, well, as it can be.
But it still fit the fiction. You know?
Yeah, it definitely did. And I'm excited to see more of what they're going to do, too, because they treated this one like, they didn't treat it like a prequel. They treat it's a Star Wars story.
Yeah, no main theme,
even though
no
it
crawl
was
in the beginning.
Part of the main plot. I want to see more of what they're going to do because, I mean, I felt like, yeah, they probably did not have as big as a budget, but it didn't feel like they really cut back on anything.
Right.
They had a really great cast. They had really great graphics and, you know, CG and special effects. I keep doing that. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what's next. I love this. I love that we're able to get this, you know, expansion of the Star Wars universe.
And that it's good.
Yeah, and that it's good and it's not crap. And it's just really, really sad that we have, that one prequel trilogy just sticking out like a sore thumb
over our heads, because this movie made the old movies look better. It made the old movies look worse. They just look so bad. They look so out of place and awful at this point.
Makes me want to go watch episode 8 again.
Yeah, great movie. So yeah, that's about all we got for you this time. As usual, if you liked the video, please give us the like button, share, subscribe. Please do tell your friends if you enjoyed the video. Help us build this up. We would be very, very appreciative of that. If you dislike the video, as always, click thumbs down. Give us some constructive criticism in the comments. Please don't be mean. It really bothers us. Don't do that to us. Don't be that guy. If you have any thoughts you want to share about Rogue One, what you thought about the plot, no spoilers because we want to keep the comment section somewhat sacred for people that haven't seen the movie. But give us your thoughts. If you thought, you know, however you feel about the Switch, the new info about that, you know, does the lower clock rate make you a little more reserved about the Switch? Are you still excited? Let us know what you think about that as well. So yeah, until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.